everybody. I'm Victoria Simmons with the Georgia Post with this week's edition of the Georgia Post Review. And our guest this week is Frank Holmes. He's not only a concerned citizen, he's invested in the community. He goes to practically all the county commission meetings, and he's also running for county commission post one against Sterling Braswell. So, welcome.
Thank you.
My co-host today is Christy Watkins. Frank, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background.
Well, I'd love to do that, but first let me say that I appreciate Georgia Post doing this.
Thank you.
And as you know, I've always been a supporter of community newspapers. Mm-hmm. I think it's so important for the people to be knowledgeable about what's going on, and I think these are great services for the people to get that done.
Thank you.
Vicki, it kind of reminds me of, you may recall several years ago, I used to write a column for this paper, and we called it Crawfish, as a nod to my Louisiana background. But it was a great
share something.
Yeah, you know she's from Louisiana, yeah.
You know that it was a lot of fun, and I guess that it was centered around my observations and concerns and opinions, if you will, of what was going on in local government. So I had a good time doing it, enjoyed it. But now I've said all that now.
And tell us more about your background.
Well, I tell you, as you know, I'm not from Crawford County originally. Louisiana is my birthplace and place that I grew up in. After I graduated from high school, I went to Southeastern Louisiana University and got my degree there in 3 years. Worked hard, but we needed to get it done. And had a good time at college, but it was hard work. Mm-hmm. After that, I went to the Air Force and spent 4 years in the Air Force working in radar and electronics. And it's kind of interesting then that at that time, electronics was changing. It was changing from the old tube types to the digital type stuff. And I thought it was just a wonderful time to get involved in that. And it's really paid off for me. It's in my work career, it's been very good at that. After I got out of the Air Force, I went to work for Honeywell. Honeywell is a major company, big in the computers, controls, service industry, and I worked for them in New Orleans. Had a job there as a startup engineer, plant maintenance kind of engineer. And I did a lot of work in boilers and boiler work. That was the background of my career. I've done that type of thing for the last 45 years till I retired, working for various companies. I've lived in New Orleans, in Baton Rouge, lived in Mobile, Alabama, Charleston, took a job transfer and came down to Middle Georgia. I lived in Macon for a while. And then about 20 years ago, we moved out to Crawford County, bought us some land and moved out here. And that's how I got to Crawford County. It's been a good experience for us, being from a small town and from the country. It really fits into our background of what we wanted. That's a quick rundown of what I've done. I worked in various job types of things, doing engineering type works, and not the standard engineering, but a type of engineering where we'd go into plants and take a look at what they were doing in the plants and make suggestions how we could improve it, and that type of thing. And it was a very rewarding career. Had a good time doing it too.
That makes sense on why you can ask some of those questions at county commission meetings now.
Well, you know, I have heard it said that, I believe it may have been in the paper, that I am a vocal, concerned citizen. And I laughed about that and I said, you know, that's right. That's true. But I also recognize that those guys are doing a good job. A lot of things have to be done, and you know, I'm happy to say that they're doing a very good job. I must also comment that I believe I can do just a little bit better job.
So why did you decide to run for county commissioner?
Well, I guess I'm at that time of life when I felt like that the first district, which is the district that I'm running in, was not getting its full due. And I felt like that this district needed a good, strong, vocal, knowledgeable person to sit in that council up there. And everybody has to realize that the county commissioner is made up of 5 individuals. And nobody is going to go in there and change everything. It has to be a group effort. It has to be worked on that. But I believe that with my background and my education and my work experience, that I will be in a position to ask the questions and seek the answers that will benefit the entire county. And I'm looking forward to working that capacity. I think I can do a good job there.
What are some of the problems that you see in the county that need to be addressed?
Well, we've got several major problems. If you attend any county commissioners meeting at all, you undoubtedly will know that roads, R-O-A-D-S, roads, is a huge concern for the county and for the citizens. It has to be number one. We are limited on what we can do with the roads because it takes money to do road work. It takes money to do it. And our tax base is not growing, and we are depending upon what's called the LMIG fund, which is a state Department of Transportation distribution through the counties. It's local maintenance and improvement grants, LMIG. And that's what we've been using for many years to do our road work that we get done. There's a couple of things that hinders us there in that we now have to match 30% of the funds. For instance, if we get a $500,000 grant for LMIG to pave some roads and do road work, then the county has to put up $150,000 in addition to that money. And that's a sizable chunk of money for a small county like we are. Nevertheless, roads is one of those things that can be done better. And they're doing a couple things now that are a little bit different. They are looking at how they do the road work. And they are taking an engineering approach as to what's the best way, not necessarily the cheapest way, but what's the best way that you can do to get the best bang for your buck. I think we really need to pursue that. I know we'll probably talk about the T-spots later on, and that's something we really need to take a look at and see where we can go on that. I guess the second thing is, and this doesn't pop up on the county commissioners meetings, but I see it all the time when I talk to people, and it's dogs. Problems with animals, dogs, and we have I believe we have a contract with a company that the planning and zoning manager, Bryant, calls those people. They come over and pick up the dogs as needed. But I don't think it's working for us the way it ought to work for us. I think we have a better option there, and I think we need to explore what we can do on that. And let me tell you something else. It's not just dogs. Out where I live, it's feral cats. Cats that don't really belong to anybody. They are domesticated in that they're not, raised up to be wild cats, but it's a really big problem. And once you get 2, then next month or 3 months from now, you're going to have 6. And then you're going to have 20. And it gets to be a real problem. That's another area that we're working on. I guess that one of the things that we really need to be thinking about is what is it that we can do to improve our tax base? And that's something that has to be explored in a lot of detail. Our property tax is the main tax that we're getting right now. And that tax base is not increasing. It may be increasing a little bit, but it's not increasing near the amount that we need. So that's something that has to be done. And the Development Authority can certainly be something that we can work with and attract jobs so that people will be moving into Crawford County as opposed to moving out of Crawford County. Another area that we really need to be talking about is our recreation department. And let me tell you that we are doing just a wonderfully good job in recreation. And the only thing I can say about recreation is that while they're doing a great job in that, I'd like to see it expanded to maybe some other areas, or at least investigated. What are you going to do with those kids who don't care a thing in the world about football or baseball or soccer? And there's plenty of them around. We do have the 4-H FFA type of programs, and that's real good. But I'd like to see just an evaluation of what else we might do to help the other people in the county. So that's some of the things that I think are important in the county that we need to be looking at.
What do you think the county does really well?
I can tell you that one of the things they're doing really well, the present council we have now, is, believe it or not, handling the money very well. I can think back of 10 years ago when every year we had to go and make a loan, a tax anticipation loan, to have enough money to carry us over to the end of the year. We're not in that position anymore. We have built up the reserves, and I mean the county and the elected officials and all those people who work in the county, the workers themselves have been diligent in doing a good job. And at the present time, we've got about a $1.2 million general fund that is there. That sounds like a lot of money, but it's not quite up to the standards that's recommended. In other words, you're going to need, for a size of our budget, you need about a $1.4 million surplus available. And that's so if times get really bad, you've got sufficient funds to run your county for a month or 2 months.
Right.
So that's one of the things that I think they do exceptionally well. I must say that the Recreation Department, for what it's doing, has been doing an outstanding job. They just really come along with that. So that's a couple of things that I think we're doing really well. The third thing that I might add on that is that, and let me give some thoughts to Mr. Fabian Hollis, who is the county manager, and that he has been and continues to explore ways that we can improve the services that come out to the citizens, and that's very important to us. I'd like to see that continue, but I also would like to see us keep up with what we need to be doing in regard to keeping the people advised as what's going on in the county. You'd be surprised at the people who never come to Roberta. Once a year, pay their taxes, once a year to buy their tags. The rest of the time, they never come to Roberta. And I would like to see us get those people even more involved in what we're doing here in Crawford County, and especially the good things going on in Crawford County. And there's lots of them.
How do you think we could do that?
Get the people involved more. Communications. I have seen people come up to vote and say, oh, I didn't know we were having an election. By the way, what are we voting on? And they'll go on there and vote. And I really think that we need to get people more involved, and I think that communication is a way to do it. The county has a county web page. There's information on there. There is a lot of Facebook material going on. The county has a Facebook page as well. Georgia Post has a web page on Facebook, and we see a lot of that type of thing. I think, though, that we really need to strive on getting the people more involved in what we're doing here in the county.
The communication thing, I think, is a problem because, believe it or not, there's still a lot of people that don't do Facebook or don't do websites or
absolutely.
So how can we reach that? Because we struggle with that too. How do we reach those people?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. It's an ongoing problem, and one that we're just going to have to continue to address. I do think we're making strides in it, though, and you're right that people have the opportunity through the Georgia Post to find out what's going on. But I would think that that circulation should certainly be improved. There is people willing to spend the money on that. Yeah. But the communications and getting this information out to the people is so vital to it. Now, we all know that I think it's on May the 3rd that the Farm Bureau is going to have a meeting for discussion of the candidates as well as the E-Splost and T-Splost. And I hope that information gets out so there's lots of people coming out, and not just coming out, but coming out and asking questions to find out what's going on and how it really is going to affect them.
Well, you mentioned T-Splost and E-Splost. What are your thoughts on E-Splost, education tax? This is a renewal and continuation. It's not a new tax.
I'm still seeking information about the E-Splost. What we're really looking at is an E-Splost is dedicated to education. We presently have a debt has been dedicated to them, and this is a renewal of that tax. With that money, they're anticipating purchasing bonds. The E-Splost is on a 5-year cycle. Those bonds are going to be on at least a 15-year cycle, which means it's not just renewing it now, it's renewing it and renewing it and renewing it
after that
to make sure that we have the funds coming in on that. My concern is that this is a continuation of the tax. In other words, we've been getting this tax in the past and have been spending that money in the past on school buses and computers and maintenance and all these other things that go to the day operation of the school. If we take a big portion of that and put that toward paying for the bonds, then how are we going to support the school buses, the computers, the maintenance that we were doing previously with that East Plus? Where's that money going to come from? I haven't worked out the numbers on it yet, but I know that the tax on sales tax has not increased. That tax may even be going down. Now, people spend a lot of money in Crawford County here, but they spend even more of it going out to Macon or Warner Robins or Fort Valley or Reynolds. And that sales money, sales tax money, doesn't do a thing in the world for us. There's no easy answer to that. But I think we need to look very carefully at how we're going to fund this and what we're going to do it. I think their program to build this school and to build this gymnasium and all these things is a wonderfully good idea. I just need to see how we're going to finance this and what we're going to do and how we're going to make sure we can pay for this thing. I believe that if the sales tax falls short, in other words, there's not enough sales tax money coming in to pay the bond dues, I believe that they will then have to be in a position to increase the property tax. I don't know how else they would pay for it. And I haven't got the answers to that yet, but I'm still exploring that. So I have to say that I think the East Blast program is certainly something that we need to certainly take a look at and understand fully. I think the school is going to be a wonderful thing if we can pull it off, but I want to make sure that we can pay for it.
So what about T-SPLOST, which is transportation tax? I know that it's coming up May 22nd, so is the E-SPLOST. What are your thoughts on T-SPLOST?
I think that from what I have seen and read and studied, this T-SPLOST can be a winner for Crawford County. And let me tell you why. We now are buying gasoline in same places, Houston, Houston County, Bibb, wherever, and we don't get anything out of that. With this new tax, we will get a portion of that money that we spend over there, but in addition to that, we'll get funding from those people who are coming down from Indiana, Illinois, buying products here, and some of that money will come back to Crawford County. If my numbers are correct, and the numbers that I have were given to us, I think that could mean about $900,000 a year coming into Crawford County for use in road and transportation areas. It cannot be used for schoolhouses or anything of that sort, but it can be used for the transportation areas. That could be anything from paving roads to graveling roads to repairing roads, I believe. If you need to go back in and do repair works, I believe that would be covered under this. And that's money that we just don't have coming in at the present time. We need that money. It becomes so important that the people in Crawford County look at this and hopefully evaluate it positively so that we can vote positively on that, because this election is going to be based upon 50%. If 50% of the people in the 16 or 17 county areas vote for it, then it's going to go in. If they don't, then it's not going in. So we want a lot of people from Crawford County to come out and evaluate it and vote your conscience. But I believe if you look at it carefully, you'll find that this is certainly something that we can look at and be most beneficial to Crawford County.
I know practically all the commissioners certainly think so. They're kind of excited about it. And at this week's county commission meeting, of course, tape won't come out till tomorrow, but they're having a representative from DOT come to provide information about T-SPLOST.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a good thing too. What are there any changes that you'd like to see in the county?
I'd like to see us continue along a lot of the paths we're going on now. I'd like to see us continue to evaluate the budget very carefully. One of the things that bothers me about the budget is that we try to set up a budget and you try to anticipate your needs, but emergencies come up, and we understand that, but we have a lot of things that are not budgeted, and that kind of messes up the budget a little bit. I'd like to just do a little bit more on budgeting process and making sure that the departments are getting what they need and where they're going for. I want to see. As I mentioned before, I'm kind of interested in taking a look at what the recreation department might do for people who are not interested in the ball fields. There may be some areas that we can improve that in the counties. I think we desperately need to look at the animal control situation. One of the limiting factors there, as always, is how we're going to pay for this. But we need to look at that and see if there's some ideas. You know, there's a lot of groups, people available who are available to do what is called rescue work for these dogs, and that might be something we could anticipate looking into a little bit further. Yeah, there's some things we can do in the county, and some of those things I think we really ought to be looking at and see where we go with them.
So are you talking about like line items in the budget, anything specific that?
No, I think that the budget, and I work with several different county managers. As you know, I've been in the election board for several years, perhaps 8 or 10 years, and I have been each year working on the budget for that board. And I know that everything that the board is talking about is looked at very carefully. And there's meetings between the county commissioners and the county managers and the department heads to evaluate everything on that budget for each department. So I think they're looking at it pretty good. I would be foolish to say, though, there's no areas in there that we can't do some improvements in that thing. There's always some areas that can be trimmed up a little bit. I think the budget process is going along pretty good, though. I don't know of any major things that we need to do. One of the things that I'd like to see the county commissioners do a little bit more, and I would be certainly interested in doing this, is that we have lots of boards in the county, and most of those boards are made up of volunteers who come and volunteer their time and this kind of thing. And I think that the county commissioners ought to come by those meetings at least once a year to introduce themselves, to meet the people, ask them how they're doing and what's going on that they could help, and kind of get more involved in that. We have a pretty good volunteer support for a lot of the county activities. Sometimes we don't recognize that, but it's been most helpful in a lot of areas. In the Board of Elections office over there, it has always been a good working relationship between the county commissioners and the board itself, and I think that that's a wonderful thing. I think that probably goes on in a lot of things that we just kind of behind the scenes.
What about, I think one of the biggest assets we have now is the new county commission building. How do you feel about that?
Isn't that a real jewel over there? I was very surprised to hear that that was going to become available to us. I think that the county has picked up a wonderful asset there. I know that the Board of Elections is going to be in an extra, just a wonderful and beautiful office over there. If you haven't seen it over, you ought to go over and take a look at it, because it's really a nice facility and taken care of. In addition to that, in the back of that is another whole space back there. Do you know what they're going to do with that?
They're talking about making it a convention center, an event and convention center.
Yeah, so. And I think that's a really good thing, and I know some of the people who've kind of talked about doing that. I hope it comes about, but it's going to be more of a community center. You know, it's not going to be necessary that big companies come down and hold a convention there, but it's going to be the kind of place that citizens of Crawford County can have a place to meet and conduct everything. Now, we've got a nice little facility now up the church building up there next to the station up there, but it's not quite big enough for what we need, and I think that's going to be a wonderful opportunity for us. I think that whole aspect of how in the world we can showcase what we have in Crawford County, boy, that's just going to be a wonderful facility for us. It's going to be super nice. A lot of hard work went into that, and I'm so pleased that thing has turned out as nice as it had. It is really nice, very nice.
It's really great for the county and the community. So
it has to be a more enjoyable workplace than what we had at the old place over there. just,
I've heard a lot of the people over there at the new, say, well, how do you like
Yeah.
your new office?
Yeah.
I said, oh, it's so much better.
Yep.
So
It's-
you don't have the leaky windows
Yeah.
with the cold air blowing in, and everything's temperature controlled. We're not fighting dust and dirt, from blowing in through the windows. So, I mean, they've all had wonderful things to say about their new facility
it's
out
been
there.
really good over there.
And Miss Joanne Hamlin with Clean and Beautiful has acquired several grants for the community
That's
center.
right.
So that's going to really be a really good
I think
asset
that
too.
that's going to be in wonderfully good hands there, and I think it's going to turn out really good for it.
Yeah,
So we
I
can
can't.
kind of take a look at that and see how it goes.
Yeah, I can't wait for it to start kicking off on that building back there.
Though, that I've only been out here about 20 years, and that's a long time, but not, it's not as long as some people have been around here. But one thing that we do have here is good people. It
we
is
do.
always so nice that you can wave at people and they just happy to wave back to you. It's just a great place to live.
Our guest today has been Frank Holmes, who is running for Crawford County Commissioner, but he's also a very involved citizen with the county and all that, and we thank you for being here. One of the things that you mentioned is dog control, so be sure and read the Georgia Post this week. Because we're going to have a story on that, because you'll just find some stuff very enlightening that goes along with what you said.
Yeah.
So. We had an unfortunate event, and it made national headlines on Facebook anyway. And but it is a problem that we really need to be looking at and see what we can do to improve that situation. I'm looking forward to the paper coming out. I generally get my paper on Thursday, so I may have to come to town on Thursday so I can get a copy
Yeah,
of it
because
already.
you might want, I'm just giving you a heads up, you might want to read that. It's going to be interesting, and we're not making a lot of friends with it, but it's some information that needed to be
It's the
brought.
facts that need to be out there.
Yeah. Some other things that are going on in the community, if you didn't read last week's paper, the city now has an ordinance for
Personal use vehicles.
personal use vehicles. I want to call it a golf cart. It's not the same thing, okay? It has to be registered. And they also have a new policy on new
The deposits.
Yeah, the deposits
Yeah.
for water, so which went up from 100 to
150.
150.
Let me say one other thing about the upcoming election. For clarification, this election for the candidates in Post 1 and Post 5 are primaries. That means that it is the Republican and the Democrat parties are going to decide who their candidate is going to be. And in my case, Mr. Braswell's case, I'm running on the Republican, he's running on the Democrat. So our main voting in election is going to take place in November. Now, we're going to be on the ballots this time, but there's such important matters on there, those two taxes that we talked about, that everybody needs to come out and vote on their opinions on those things.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you, Mr. Frank. That's our show for
All right.
today, and we
Thank
just
you.
thank you for coming and being with us
Had a
today.
great time, really enjoyed it, good to see y'all, and
You too.
thanks for doing all these good things.
And I'll
All right,
see you
thank
at the
you.
meeting tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night, for sure.
Thank you. That's our show for this week, and we just thank you for watching.